We're going to look at advanced sidechain techniques. If you are new to sidechain, I do have a number of videos already on my channel, so if you want to get to grips with it, click the link above. I'm also going to be giving you a free multi-band rack available for Ableton users, which will be in the multi-band section of this video, but let's get into the first technique. Inverse EQ curves work by analyzing the frequency response of the incoming signal. And it's great for instruments whereby they fill more of the frequency spectrum and you want to get more specific, detailed cuts, but also keep a fuller picture. So two instruments that actually fill a lot of the frequency spectrum would be pads and vocals. And you want to sit them and marry them together in partnership without competing for space. So this is Track Spacer. And I'm going to start by disabling it and then enabling it so that you can hear the difference.
Lost in the dark.
And you can see there, by hitting the freeze button, we freeze the picture. This little tool is genius. If you want to maintain that fuller sound whilst getting a more accurate sidechain result, then you definitely need to get it. And the link to Track Spacer is below. When we think of sidechain, we often think of sending one signal to duck another. But what if we send that signal back from the second part, and so we're sidechaining two parts together? One instance where you might do this is if you have two bass layers where they're kind of blending over the top of each other. I have two respace parts here and an auto filter on both tracks, whereby I've got automation opening and closing the filters in opposite directions. So the first one is closing and the second one is opening. Sidechaining these two parts to each other will ensure that when one is peaking in the frequency spectrum with more energy, the other one gets pushed back in the mix and turned down. Here's the two parts frozen and turned to audio. I'm going to add a compressor onto both of them. And then all you need to do is sidechain one to the other. So activating the sidechain on both of the compressors. And you can see on the picture that we actually would like this bass to duck out when this one clearly increases in volume in this moment. And it's all about attenuating and adjusting your settings to whatever result that you want to achieve. And if we freeze and flatten these tracks again, we can see exactly what's happening. And whereas you start with this picture, you now end up with this picture, and it's a much cleaner mix of the two bass tracks together. More tips and tricks on my social media, so if you want to check me out, I'm also on TikTok and on Instagram. Next is Ghost Sidechain, and you can do this with audio or with MIDI. I do have an example of doing this with audio in my recent video where I take the Adam F Circles break and create a drum pattern out of it using audio from the kick to trigger a sidechain, a ghost sidechain. You can use a trigger to duck on a compressor, EQ on a gate, and the shorter the signal, the more control that you'll have using the parameters of the plugin. So here we have a drum section, and I'm going to use the LFO tool with some MIDI to duck the breaks using the pattern of the kick drum. First, get a MIDI track and insert your MIDI notes in the pattern of the kick drum. Bear in mind, at this point, we don't have any instruments on the MIDI track, but we're going to add an external instrument. And this is going to send that MIDI data to the LFO tool. So grab an LFO tool and stick that on whichever track you want to duck. On the LFO tool, you can click the note retrig twice and it will go onto MIDI envelope. And then you send from your external instrument MIDI out to the breaks. And you're going to go onto LFO tool. That's going to send that MIDI data to the LFO tool on the breaks, and then you will get a ducking sensation in the patterning of the kick drum. And you have an array of presets on here, so I like to choose from one of the sidechain options. Remember to double click on the note retrig again so that that envelope MIDI comes in. So before, and then with the LFO tool enabled, another form of sidechain could be frequency-specific sidechain, and there's two plugins from FabFilter that do this exceptionally well. It is Pro Q3 and Pro MB. Let's take a look at these two tracks here, so the bass group and the pad group. If I solo them together, got a lot of frequencies filling the central space here, and we can duck the pads and send them to the back by sidechaining using the bass. So we're going to add firstly a Pro Q3, and we're going to send the pads to the back. So we're going to create a bell cut, widen the Q. We're also just going to roll off the lows because we don't need the lows of the pads, and we're going to have a high shelf so that it pushes it back into the room. At the moment, this is just an EQ curve, but we can make it dynamic, and this is the beauty of Pro Q3. If you right click, you can make dynamic, and now this will react to the frequency response of the signal, the group of the pads. But we can go one step further and we can sidechain this using the bass signal. So come down onto Pro Q3, we're going to go to the bass group. And then if you go above the gain and you press auto and you insert the sidechain, now this EQ cut will respond dynamically to the bass incoming signal. To further send those pads to the back and to the side, you can then also enable this on mid-side mode. We're going to enable mid. And now this will cut only the mids, send your pads to the back, but keep them in the side image. In this drum section, I've just added in an Amen, and I'm going to show you using the Pro MB. I like to do this using my kick drum onto things like percussion and breaks, whereby you use the Multiband Sidechain. You can create as many bands as you want. I'm going to create a band in the lows and also a band in the upper frequencies because I want to get a bit of a ducking feeling on the breaks that's triggered by the kick drum. So the same as what we did on Pro Q3, we're now going to sidechain using the kick drum this time. And then to enable the sidechain, open up Expert and click External In. If you don't have access to the FabFilter plugins, I have made you this rack, which you can download. It's in the description. And this is a multiband sidechain. So using multiband dynamics, and you can now activate the sidechain on the lows, in this instance, by sending the kick drum to the Amen. I have too many tracks. There we go. So now on the low band, the sidechain is activating the lows here. And you also have your macros, so you can change the low-mid crossover. And you could even, if you want to, have a different sidechain input on the mid band. So mid band frequencies would be things like snare drums. Send the snare into the mid band, and then we could also send the kick drum into the upper frequency band to emulate that ducking that we had with the Pro MB. And now we have sidechain control on our individual bands. Multiband Sidechain Rack available to download, link in the description. My name is Becky Safe. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please like it, comment and subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more content from me. And I will see you for another one. Bye!